Welcome back. I'm playing Warhammer 40,000 Gladius, and last time we talked about how you can create a new game and what all those different settings do. Now, today's guide video is about, well, you started your new game, you just watched your cutscene to the beginning of your faction so you know what's going on, and then you get set up at these kinds of screens here. So we're going to talk about, starting your new match, and also city mechanics is what we're going to focus on today, in addition to the research, because that kind of falls into this situation here. So I'm just going to briefly show how this works. So if you're playing as either the Eldar or Drukari, when you start out, you're going to have a map that looks like this. And so what you're going to see is your city is already going to be founded. And this is why I recommend that you have very low rivers and things set up. And the same with lakes, because as you can see, I've actually had an exceptionally bad start here as an Eldar player, because I can't just make cities anywhere on the map. I can only make cities at these webway gates here, okay? And it's going to be the same as the Drukari. So one of the advantages that these guys have, because they only have access to this amount of cities, and as these webway gates get killed, as other factions expand, then I can't make other cities. And likewise, once you kill these cities, once the Eldar has made it, they can't found new cities once all these gates are killed. So to give you an advantage, it will therefore show you where every webway gate in the game is, and then it'll also give you a little bit of sight around there so you can see guys that are moving around capturing. So as other factions are moving around, you'll see them capture these points and do some attacks, so you'll get an idea of where the enemy is as well. So what'll happen is you'll start out with this activate webway gate ability, and it costs influence, which is that purple resource here. And as you advance through your research, you'll then get an option to start founding cities from activated webway gates, and then you'll do that. What I generally recommend is not to just randomly start activating webway gates around the map until you've cleared out all the enemy units around there, because once you lay claim to that webway gate by activating it, neutral units that are going to be surrounding the webway gate will then start to attack the gate, and it is possible that they may kill it. Now, likewise, assuming you're playing against another Eldar or Drukari player, they're going to most likely activate webway gates around their start, but by late game, you guys are going to be fighting over these webway gates. Once you lay claim to it, nobody else can capture it. It can only be killed. But so likewise, by the late game, you're going to want to make sure you've activated all the webway gates around you and started making cities there, so your opponent, Eldar player or Drukari, do not come over and take over this webway gate from you, okay? And then the other advantage that the webway gates have is, let's say we'll activate this one here. I can now see everything, but now those neutrals will want to attack me. But in addition to being able to found the city around this, once you have that tech, you can then use webway travel, which allows you, for the cost of your influence. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the influence to do it. You can click this ability here, and then it'll give you access to any square around, one square around the webway gate, and then you can warp your units around the map by, if I had the resources, I click here, and then I could warp them around and start moving around the map here too. So the webway gates kind of serve as two different benefits for you. One is to found the cities once they've been activated and you have the research already set up to do that, because again, early on in the game, I don't have the research to found the city, so I just activated this webway gate. It can now get attacked because I have ownership of it. I can warp guys around there, but now it could be destroyed by the neutrals, which could definitely kill it within 1 to 2 rounds. So let's just, for the heck of it, end the turn and see if they're going to attack it. So you can see there must be an opponent around there that's killing the webway gates here, because they get experience for killing it. And the neutrals, for whatever reason, decided not to attack the webway gate, but they certainly can get aggroed onto it, especially if you have units warping in and you start attacking them. Then it's just going to make them angry and they can start attacking you. So that's how the webway gates would work at the start of the map if you're playing as Drukari or as Craft World Eldari, which is what I have here. Now let me set up a map here with a different faction here, because the start will be different for other factions that don't use webway gates. Okay, here's another unique faction at the start. So you just started your new game, you watched your cinematic to see what you're doing, and now you're set up here with the Space Marines, and you're like, well, what the heck am I supposed to do? You have these special abilities up in the top left-hand corner here, okay? So the first thing you do is you deploy your city, and the big thing to know about your Space Marines here is they only have access to one city, okay? So you're going to get to be able to build out your cities as much as you want from there. But because you only have one city, you're going to want to make sure you have it in a good start. So what I recommend typically is just running around, because if I deploy it here, I have now lost all of these building squares along this cliff face until I have moved guys around here, and I think there's actually going to be some water here. So let's move it around. So yes, you can see. So I would lose 3 building slots with the Space Marines, which would be devastating if I deployed my city around here, okay? So let's come over this way, and we've got pretty decent movement here. The big thing you got to balance on is, you know, where do you want to put your city? Because you typically want to be at put it around something that's going to give you benefit. You need to have vision, but if you put it too close to the edge of the map here, then as you can build your cities out significant tiles with all your research, you're then going to cut your amount of buildings. So you're typically going to want to have your buildings deployed somewhere in the inside here. And then the other thing is you can deploy these fortresses of redemption, which will allow you to capture different points here. So if you come here, you can see I've now captured that and got that under my control. Now this isn't how you'd want to do it, but I'm just going to do it to show you how you deploy your base. Let's say I deploy our base around here, and now we've got all this under our control. Typically what you'll want to do is deploy your base next to one of these resource nodes. If I were playing this map, I would restart it, because this would be an exceptionally bad map start for a Space Marine, because you have all this difficult terrain to deal with. So you'd want to ideally have a big open area. But that is how you would start your cities as a Space Marine player, and then you just start capturing things around here and start your building process. Out with a unit that's going to be unique to the faction, that's going to be a builder, and then you're going to have 2 or 3 different warriors to help you run around the map and creep, okay? So for the Necrons, apparently all my starts here are being very cursed, because this would actually be kind of a bad start too. But for the Necrons, they can only found a city underneath a location that has this green area here, because that means there's a tomb world underneath there. So unless you're going to move around the map and be willing to wait for a turn or two to form another city, which I would never recommend, yeah, I don't see anything else. So this is going to force me to found my city here. And so you can see here, this is going to be the only square. So you click, you'd found your city, and now it's been activated, and it deletes the unit that you've used to found your city, and then you start acquiring tiles around there. I generally recommend that you always acquire the resource node next to you, because this is going to give you 1 electricity, 1 influence per turn here, which are your resources. And then once you capture it, you're now going to get plus 20 growth of your people, because there's going to be a percentage to every resource node that's around you. So again, this one is the same type, so that would be just moving a unit over there. You'll acquire the tile, which you'll see with this blue border here. So by doing that, I'm getting 2 additional research every turn, which is what we use to research technology. But if I were to have a city around here and acquire that with the borders, then I'd get plus 20% research. For these kind of resources, it's plus 20 growth. So it all depends on what you have. To just show you, so again, this would be your city founding unit here. What you typically do is just kind of run your units around each direction to kind of get an idea of what you're seeing. You capture these resource nodes to allow you to get good resources, and so now you have all those things under your control, and now you just have to decide with your mechs here where you want your city to be. is like if you need a lot of influence, you may want to come up here. If you want to have some electricity bonuses, you may want to come over this way. What I would typically recommend is running over here. So you have that research bonuses going on. You have a little bit of ore. You've got a bunch of research stuff here. And it also gives you quite a bit of territory to allow you to expand. Another option that you would have if you're kind of a more advanced player, you say, wow, this is an exceptionally good start because I have 3 different outposts right next to each other. So while it may make your city start be a little bit slower by not being able to immediately capture one of these tiles, if I was actually playing this map, I would found my city here, because as I'm expanding my acquisition tiles through research, I will eventually be able to capture all 3 of these nodes under the control of my city, which will give me 20% research speed, 20% influence speed, and 20% influence generation, and 20% energy generation. So I would actually found my city here if I were to be playing at the start, because this is an exceptionally good start, and then just start acquiring tiles around here to help me start start getting new buildings, because right now I only have 2 out of 2 building slots in this location. And so what you do is you'd acquire a tile, so it'll say you have each one of these things is how many buildings you can build on each tile, and then they'll give you what kind of traits. So if I come here, it'll just be 20% influence if I build an influence generating city. If I built food generating cities on this buildings on this one, I'd suffer a 20% penalty. Likewise, if I built ore generating buildings, I get 20% ore. Down here, I'd be getting 20% additional energy. So if I were to be building something, and then what the other thing you can do is if there's difficult stuff on the terrain, you can clear that out. You don't really have to do that here. But if there was like wireweed, let's say I founded a city over here, you'd have to clear out that difficult terrain before you could start building on that site. So if you were starting out here, you've now founded your city, you've moved your units around, you'll then have to decide what kind of city mechanics you'd want. I would typically recommend just coming here and clearing out this tile because you're not suffering any negative traits. It'll give you 3 building tiles because I'm likely going to want to do some buildings because I have it on a standard speed. It's going to take a couple turns to go there. And then the next thing you do is move through your research, and this will give you an estimate of how long it's going to take you to research the tech. If you haven't changed your research settings in terms of what you have, what you'll typically need to do is research 2 tech per tier to get to the next tier. So again, to get through tier 1, you're going to need to research 2 things on tier 1. So let's just click 1 here. It's going to cost 36 research at our current research generation state. It's going to take 4 turns to do that. If you move around the map and you get additional research through different abilities, then that will reduce the research speed. Or if you build buildings that'll generate more research, that again will decrease the research. And so we'll click here, and now we've done everything, and you'd end your turn is how this would work. Likewise, if you ever want to go back and change your research, you come up here and you can click and do different research. You'll be able to save the progress you've made on your research, so you won't be penalized. But typically, once you select something you want to keep it, you cannot activate multiple research at once. So you'll go through here, you'll do this one. If you want to change your mind, you come over to Cult of Speed, you do that, and you get that instead, and it'll just tell you whatever you're researching up here, and you go through. The next things that you need to know about your cities are you click on your main city center here, and every city will give you these kind of statistics here, okay? And so what you have is different populations, and what you need to know about populations is that when you go over to the right here, it tells you how many are required for your city to function. Right now, we don't have much for building, so we only need 1 population to run our city, so that works out fine. Below it, it'll tell you your growth. So it's going to at our current growth rate, which is 9.4, it'll take us 4 turns to get our population up to the next one. And so it goes by whole numbers. So we currently have 1 population, and 4 turns that'll come out, it'll increase to 2. And what you need to know here is every building, no matter what type, will take one population to staff that building. So if you build a food building, it'll take one population for that to function. One population for your ore, one population for any of these things. So that's how the population works. It's a pretty simple mechanic here. And the ways you affect the growth are either through research technology. There's also special abilities that certain factions can get that will increase the growth, or the thing that every faction can do to affect the growth rate is by producing additional buildings that give you that increase your population limit. So the more population limit you have, so 1 out of 7, but you can build different shelters. And again, early on I don't have it unlocked, so maybe I'll show a new city that has that. But if you build a additional population limit, it'll increase your growth speed, because more people are going to want to live in your city if you have more buildings available for them to live in. The big thing you want to know though is you don't want to build more research buildings or production buildings than what you have a population to support, because then it's going to start applying negative traits to your city, which will slow your production and resource generation. And then on this main screen here, it'll give you an idea of how much of each resource each city is producing. For every tile that you acquire, that will require 1 influence as upkeep. So as you can see, I only have 1 tile under my control through the city. So therefore, I only have 1 being penalized there. And then different units will have different kind of upkeeps. As you hover over here, you'll see it takes 1 food and 1 influence as upkeep cost for these. So that goes into your calculations here. Now, as you're going through buildings, you need to look at the kind of upkeep, because different buildings will have different upkeep. Generally, most factions will have electricity as the upkeep, but as you can see here, the electricity building actually takes ore as upkeep. So again, you just need to always take that into consideration. And then if you look under the attributes section of your building, it'll tell you what every building does. So for every food, squig herds, which is a food generating building, it'll give you 6 food. But if I built it on that -20, then it would be -20% of that 6 would be the food that it's generating. So you typically want to decide, do a little bit of forethought on what buildings you're putting where, because one really major thing that this game really sucks about is once you build a building on a tile, there's no way for you to ever destroy that building and build something else there. I wish they would allow you to do some modifications, but they don't. So you need to have forethought and just not randomly put things around on different buildings. And you also want to make sure you're not just randomly acquiring tiles without a plan, or you're going to run out of influence. And then the other thing you need to know about your basic buildings here is you have something called loyalty at the very bottom. For every 1 increase in population, so if this is 1, you're suffering 1 loyalty penalty from that population. If you have 2 population, you'll have 2 loyalty penalties. And the bigger thing is every city you found outside of your first city will automatically apply a -6 loyalty penalty to every city. And the reason you want your loyalty to be positive, as it's telling you here, if you hover over it, for every positive point of loyalty you have, it's going to increase your resource output from your city by 1% for every whole point. So at 5, I have a 5% resource output benefit going, and if I get it to be negative, what will happen is I'll suffer a negative penalty to my resource output by 2. So if I had a -2 loyalty here, I'd actually be dropping my resource output of my city by 4%. And so that can have massive swings in the amount of resources, because as you build bigger cities, they're going to start generating significant amounts of resources. And if you can get really good positive loyalty benefits, that will really increase the amount of resource generation that your cities are making. So, and then as you're founding additional cities, as you can probably figure out, let's say I have 3 cities, that means the 3rd city that I'm forming is going to start with a -12 loyalty penalty unless I have other technology upgraded, or certain factions have special units that'll increase your loyalty to stop that from being real negative. But now you're going to have very slow production speed, because your production speed is also affected by your loyalty, and it'll drop the efficiency of your other city short term until you get it going. So that can really affect what you're doing here in terms of your efficiency. And then as you're first starting out with your cities, you're only going to be able to acquire one tile around there. But as you unlock additional research, you'll then be able to get additional tile acquisition. So for the orcs, tier 2 is going to allow me to build buildings that'll increase my population limit. Tier 3 will allow me to get fighting pits, which is a building that increases my loyalty. And then every faction will have research that looks like this. And what this does is it allows you to increase your tile acquisition by 1. Now, depending on what type of faction you're playing, that'll determine how many tiles you can acquire with your cities. So again, if I was to acquire tiles here at tier 1, I can only get these ones. After that second tier, I can go all the way around here. And then if you get a third one, you can go all the way around here. And now you can see how it's exponentially increasing the efficiency of your cities and how much resources you're going to generate. As you're going through the map, you're going to found cities that are going to have additional resource benefits. So here, let me load a file here that has a bigger city just to kind of show to explain what I'm showing here. Okay, so here is a campaign I was playing on the impossible difficulty, and as you can see, I've got several cities being formed here. And if we come here, you can see I've got 78 out of 78 population. And you're like, well, that seems like it's pretty good, but this was actually bad city planning on my part, because I have now acquired everything that's within range of this city here. And I have 6 population now that aren't able to do anything for me. So that means I'm effectively suffering a 6 loyalty penalty with this city, which means I'm lowering my resource output from the city by 12%. And so that, I guess that's not quite true, because I'm net positive. So I'm lowering my population my output by 6%. And it's also going to cause me to not be able to build one more additional city unless I'm willing to risk putting this into a negative loyalty. So this was bad city planning on my part. So what you want to do is calculate how many places you're going to need to build for resources once you get to the later part, and then make sure that you're not building excessive amounts of captive pens, which is the name of the population limit building for the Forces of Chaos here, because this is just a net negative. So instead of building, one of these extra population, I should have instead built, either a loyalty building to allow me to build additional cities and not have to worry about the loyalty penalty, or just done a extra resource generation building. So this is why you need to pay attention to this, because as you can see, I'm suffering a negative 78% loyalty penalty from my 78 population here. And then I'm also suffering a negative 18 loyalty modifier because I have so many cities. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 cities. And I'm guessing I must have pretty close to another one coming here if I have negative 18. But that's just a bad situation there. So you just always have to make sure you're very conscious of the situation. And then you can see what kind of resources this city is forming or getting me here. And if you want to rapidly get between your different cities, you can then move around. So this is a newer city. So, I only have 7.8, but again, I have 66 out of 44, so I have way more population here than I actually need, but that's because I'm rapidly going to be going around and then start building buildings with this faction here. So you can see I've rapidly expanded much quicker than what I actually need for production here, whereas this would be a much more reasonable city. But again, I keep wanting to expand my population so my growth is very high, so then I can just rapidly be building buildings, because by this point in the game I should be able to get 1 population building per turn, and so you want to make sure you're at least getting your growth rate high enough that you're able to keep that up, so that way I can rapidly expand, because now I'm going to have to start building buildings to increase my population, because I only have 27 out of 30, but then I really only need to have 17 right now. So, you know, it's like, let's just slow our roll on our population and then just focus on generation here to get this. Now, this is a bit of a bad example where it makes it look like I'm just not sure what I'm doing, but that's because the Chaos Forces have so many abilities that you can just get their growth rate going exponentially high. But this is an example of what you need to be thinking about while you're building your cities here, as you're expanding, getting your resources going. And then what you're going to do while you're expanding is you're going to need to take into consideration, well, what do I need for resources here? Because you can see you have food, you have ore, you have energy, you have research, and you have influence. These are all the resources in the game. Now, certain factions won't have to do all of them, but depending on what kind of faction you're playing, you'll have to decide what kind of resources. So as you can see, I have volcanic ground here, so that's giving me an ore benefit. That's what that blue resource is here, but I suffer a food penalty here. So it's like early on I was getting mostly vehicles, so I just build 2 ore cities so I could focus on the ore. But then I wanted to start getting infantry, and they require food. So then I was able to come down to these grasslands here, and this green tells you, as you can see here, the green leaf, that's a symbol for food. So I'm getting food benefits here, so then I want to be building all my food generation buildings over here so I can get massive amounts of food to be able to just pump out tons of infantry. And then if you come over to the Arctic, you know, you're not generally getting much for benefits here, but by coming over to the deserts, that gives you positive electricity or energy. So what I'd eventually do is, if I was going to be making energy heavy units, is I'd found a city over in the desert here so I can start getting lots of different energy benefits. If I needed to have technology or research, then I'd come over here where I'm having lots of technology. And then what you'll want to, or research, and what you'll do is, as you're pushing across the map, you'll need to decide where you want to found cities depending on what resources you want. And then by having such tile acquisition, you can then strategically place your cities later in the game so you can get the most amount of research. So let's say I needed to get influence and energy, then coming over here and founding a city where I can then capture these influence areas and have energy benefits. This would be where I'd want to found the next city. Or if I'm sitting here fighting another faction and I'm having difficulty fighting them, then I may want to found a city, you know, on the outskirts of the town, so I can then get a production city going up, so I can get my forces over here to start fighting much more effectively here. So you can get an idea of what you would need for different kinds of cities depending on what you need for your resources. Now, the other benefits that cities give you is if you have units inside cities here, you'll see I'm getting the city benefit. So what it allows you to do is it causes me to suffer, get a 33% damage reduction to any units that are within the city walls, which are these tile acquisitions here that have these borders. That means it's within city walls or city limits. It increases the amount of healing that my units would get by 100%. So what you'll do if your units are injured, you'll either run them back to your city, or you'll run them onto these outposts here, because they also give you a healing bonus by coming onto here. It's not nearly as good, but I'll get a 17% damage reduction here compared to the 33% that I'll get within city walls. But I'll get a 50% healing rate bonus here, because you'll heal a little bit of health every turn when you're on one of these kind of squares. And if you're over in the city, like I said, you get 100%. And then you also get a 33% damage reduction being inside the city limits here. Whereas this one, you're only getting a 17%. So generally, if you're getting attacked and you're fighting to defend a city, you'll want to have your guys on the city tiles to really help yourself survive and be able to fight better. Now, the other thing is, if you're getting siege, cities do have weapons. So as you can see here, I've got a range 3 weapon and a range 2 weapon, so you can use that to help defend yourself, so you'd be fighting. And then you can also set rally points with your cities here to help you decide where you want to have guys go to on the map here. So if you're producing a bunch of units from your city, you can use that to help you select where they're going to go. The other thing you can do with cities is if you have a very small city but you need to have people hiding, you can move them inside the city and they'll go into this cargo spot there, and then they won't be able to be attacked, and they will heal inside that cargo, but it tends to be at a little less rate than what they'd be on the city limits here. But that is an option for you. And then the other thing I wanted to mention with the cities is you can't destroy buildings like we talked about, but once you're building your city production, if you build multiple of the same building, that'll increase your production speed. So originally when you're building, you know, let's say a barracks, which would be the infantry producing one, if you had one, let's say you have 4 turns, but if you build a couple other ones, that'll dramatically increase your production. So you can see that here. So I'm getting a production benefit from my loyalty, and also plus 12 from my buildings because I have multiple of the same building type here. So as you can see here, I've got multiple hero production buildings. These ones here, I'm trying to see. You can just see the kind over here. I'm just trying to see if I have multiple. But pretty, I guess you can just look at the symbols here. I don't know. Here we go. Here's the Cult of Chaos. So those are my barracks buildings. So I have multiple cults of chaos here. So that allows me to pump out these units quickly, and the same with my heroes. So I can effectively generate heroes every turn. Now, while you can't destroy buildings, let's say you overextended and you can't afford the energy or the research costs here, you can deactivate some buildings here, and that'll make it reduce your upkeep costs. But for the most part, you're always going to want to have those activated here. Now what I could do potentially is I could turn that down, and that, if I would have deactivated that before I got the population, it would have nullified that penalty. But for the most part, I already have the population, so it's not really affecting me much. If you came over to here where I have my vehicles being produced, again, you can see that I have multiple vehicle buildings here because it's increasing my vehicle production by 6 for every one that I have, and then some ore. So that's how you can really expedite the production of your units. And you also get access. You can see each one of these is the symbol for the population centers. This is the symbol for your loyalty buildings. This is your ore generating buildings, is the ore symbol. Same with the food. You also have access to energy buildings, so you can just kind of get at a glance know what you're getting. These are influence buildings. There is what that symbol is. And I guess I didn't build any research buildings because I don't really see any resource stuff here. But you can get an idea of your city and then just scroll through it and then start producing units. Now you can produce multiple and get them queued up by selecting multiple units here if you wanted that. Same with over here. Let's say I wanted to get multiple vehicles, I could do that and come over here, you know, get multiple chaos spawn if I want to get infantry there. That's how you get things queued up. Other thing I wanted to mention about cities is while you're advancing in cities, it actually decreases your line of sight. So as you're moving through the city, you would need to move closer if you're going to get there. And you'll also see if you're attacking, you would want to kind of hover over and make sure that there be a red square around the unit that you want to attack. Obviously, I wouldn't be killing my own cities, but every city has some sort of main HQ center. So for this city, this would be the area that you'd have to attack. And as you can see, it has 636 health. So the amount of health that the city has will get higher the larger the city is and the more population that's there. But if the opponent were to be attacking this city and they killed this unit here, the whole city that's being around this area would immediately be destroyed. And to kill your opponent, to get a kill victory and knock them out, you have to take out every one of their cities. So you don't need to destroy tiles. You just kill the city at the center, the building at the center. So here's what it would look like for the Tyranids here. You kill this and everything around that would be destroyed, and you would kill the things around the city. So that can really destroy your opponent. But that's how the city mechanics work. I hope that's helpful. The big things to know, like we talked about, is the Space Marines only have one city. The Eldar use the Webway, as we discussed. And then the Adeptus Sororitas, when they're taking over and they can form unlimited amount of cities. But when they're founding additional cities, their secondary cities can only have one tile acquisition around it, even with the upgrades. So again, and then the Necrons, like we talked about, only can form cities on these tiles here, which are the Necron tombs, and you can't delete that. So no matter what, as long as there's a Necron tomb symbol, that's where the Necrons can found their cities. There's no way to remove that aspect here. So I hope that helps you with your city management and how you go about doing that. Sometimes you need to clear actually tiles around there if you want to get additional building space. Doesn't look like any of these actually need to clear tiles out, unfortunately. But if you need to clear a tile, that's what this tile indicator is. Sometimes you can clear out some ore, because if it's only like 10% bonus, it makes more sense for you to build an additional ore building. But early on, especially if you don't have a lot of influence, you may want to just have less buildings and then later clear the tile. But every faction has a worker unit that can clear those tiles, so you don't have to waste the production time of your city. You can just have these guys. So in this, for the Chaos, it's Cultists, and you can just clear the tiles using this ability here, and that'll give you additional building slots potentially. Now, not every area that has a benefit can do that, but if you can see it here, that means you can do it with your other unit too. And then these are all the different kind of building types that you can select. You can queue up buildings as well, but I can't because I'm out of resources here. Let's delete that. So let's say I wanted to queue up multiple tile acquisitions. You can just do that, and if I have multiple building slots, I could build multiple buildings as well. So that's how you can kind of queue things up, so you don't have to always every turn go to your city. And then if you wanted to silence this so it doesn't keep alerting you that you have production, you can just put the building to sleep, and that will stop it from indicating that you need to do something to build there. But those are the basics to your city mechanics. I hope that helps. If it does, please give my channel a like and subscribe to encourage me to post more content for you. I hope you're enjoying these videos. Have a great day.